And what about the semiconductors? You said that there is enough beyond right now that the chip makers have. I mean, what's your visibility on how many months they can go on?
Yeah, so again, this is something that is very difficult to answer because we've been a small buyer of the entire semiconductor market. If it's at a 500 billion, we're 45 billion as an industry, the automotive and auto component industry globally, and that's a 7-8% buy. We hope to go to 20% just because of the number of chips that are increasing. We're also at the tail end of the technology. We're also a highly efficient industry, and therefore, the margins on that they get from the auto component industry may be lesser than what they get in the electronics industry. And during the pandemic, a lot of capacity got diverted to other industries. And as other companies had problems with floods and fire in Houston and Taiwan and Japan, etc., those are all coming back. The investment cycle is pretty long in terms of 18 months to get to a fab up and running. In India, there's again an opportunity to set up a fab or to set up a facility.
10 billion.
Yeah. Again, PLI scheme has given for display systems and semiconductors, so that's another opportunity again. So I can't put a finger on it and say this is how long it'll take. What's happening is that chips are being manufactured, chips are going to OEMs and then deciding which model they put the chip in. And that's why we're seeing the slowdown in terms of vehicle output. So the wait periods have become longer. We consume, of course, as the component industry, fewer chips than the OEMs consume. And that number is going to only go up because you look at connectivity, you look at telematics, you look at all the good stuff that's happening in the vehicle in terms of disruption, and we're going to have to keep increasing. But then electronics is also going to keep increasing. If you look at your smartphones and other devices, they're being used more, and therefore the chip industry is going to have to keep up with or cater to the demand. I don't know if that answers your question in terms of how long it'll take, but it's.
But how do you see this year, the coming fiscal year, in terms of prices? Because we've seen a fair amount of price rises when it comes to the cars, and that's sort of coming from the back end as well, right? So because of how you guys are taking.
So I feel that the OEMs, the numbers they predicted, will meet those numbers.
Okay.
We don't have a demand problem, which is great. It's a great problem to. It's not a great problem to have. And I remember that we were a few years ago, a couple of years ago, we were always looking for demand creation as something that the government would help us with, especially when you look at commercial vehicles went through a rough patch. Today we don't have that problem. Today we have the opposite problem of supply problem. So I feel if everything goes well, we should be able to meet the numbers that the OEMs have projected. And I think we'll have some growth. Given the fact that in the first half of the year we had such great growth, we're sitting on a pretty positive year from a growth perspective. However, again, if something blows up in Ukraine or Russia, and if something gets worse, I don't know how to even answer that question. So it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that.
Can I ask you a question? So tell me, I asked you, we have this war happening, and the Eastern European countries are suffering. Their political stability is a question mark, and their currency is really debilitating. With China lockdown, do you think there's an opportunity for India? I mean, we in some sense missed out the bus when we talk about India plus one. Really no investment happened, but yes, export orders have gone up very much. Do you think here is another chance for us to market ourselves well and get some investments, or is it far-fetched?
No, I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, if you look at 76% growth in exports, I feel if you look at the investments we're making in technology, if you look at PLI scheme, it's all geared towards this. And I feel that we're sitting on a great platform to leverage what's happening. Now again, we were asking me a very geopolitical question. I don't know how the world will pan out, who will be decoupled with who. Today we have good relationships with Russia, we have good relations with the US, we're sitting in a good position. I don't know what happens to the Eastern European countries. I don't also know how much local manufacturing will take place across the world.
Right.
But again, this is a great opportunity for us to localize as well. So the opportunity exists, and I think again from a growth perspective, we're still looking at a 7 to 8% growth in terms of what the economists tell us. And we had an economist yesterday who talked about that. So if that growth continues, then their investments will follow, because it's one of the few markets where we still see growth.
Stability and growing.
So we talk about building, creating stuff, everything, and so I would like to ask you about how are we focusing on sustainability, which is the theme.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. COP26 put out a 5-pronged strategy for sustainability, and if you look at the theme for the year, it's all about decarbonization and sustainability across the globe. In fact, ESG is becoming extremely important. Banks are looking at ESG even when you're lending money. So fortunately, we're in an industry that's a little ahead of the curve, I would say, than other industries, because we have been focusing on sustainability, on green technology, green manufacturing, whether it be renewable energy, solar, etc. We've been doing this for a while. So I think that this is a great opportunity for companies, or the country really, to look at renewables, to look at, to sort of lose their dependence on import of oil and gas, etc. So I feel that we are working in the right direction. The push from the government is in the right direction, and as an industry, again, we have been working on sustainability for a while. Some larger companies have been doing it. Now I think across the board we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to manage our supply chain, and the bigger tier 1 suppliers are going to have to manage the supply chain to make sure that your entire supply chain is sustainable. And you're almost going to be forced to do this even from banks when they're lending money, etc. This has become extremely important, and I think it's the right direction to head in. So it's definitely going to give a push in the right direction to the industry.
So I will also supplement. We did map, the ACMA cluster programs that we have. We've helped something like 1,200 plants become world class, and we've mapped. I don't collect the exact, but I'll give you the number. I'll check with my team. We have a number on the kind of carbon saving that we have done, and we believe that we can add another 25% to, up it by 25% in the next 2 years. Our cluster programs, one of them is called Zero Defect and Zero Defect, and this cluster program is aimed at when you produce, there is no defect. Okay, so the cost and the energy and the raw materials that you sort of use in terms of once there's a defect, you have to redo the whole thing. There's no redoing of it, and therefore you save a lot resources in that. And that apart, zero effect on the environment. So whatever you do, there are no discharge, there is no pollution that's being created by the companies. So this is something really very good. I think 8 to 9 companies today are actually zero defect, in the sense what comes out can straight fit into a machine. You have to just take it and just put it. So that is something really, really interesting. We also run cluster programs that are called resource efficiency cluster programs. They map your manufacturing lines and see where there is wastage happening. Okay, whether it is of raw materials, whether it is of energy, and all of in those, we actually measure the losses that you're doing, and eventually sort of it's a cost. So it's in your interest to make all those processes so much leaner, so much more resource efficient, including water, because water is used in cooling, oil is used in cooling. So we are able to make significant conservation there as well. So this is a very big delivery from ACMA, I must say. I will give you the exact number of the carbon footprint I have in some way.
Also, to add to that, what we've been able to do in ACMA is also align with institutes like IIT. We've had aligned with IIT in Sonipat, and now also with IIT in Bombay. And I feel that these are again opportunities for academia and industry to come together. Something that's very need of the hour, given the disruption in the industry. So while we're looking at electric vehicles and we look at technologies for product and processes, we'll also be looking at things like sustainability and solutions on how we can, improve on sustainability, etc. In the future, because it all becomes part of the